Hey guys, what's up? My name is Crystal. I'm in my kitchen today because I'm going to be canning up some pickled carrots. If you've been here a while, you've seen maybe our harvest videos and you know that we haven't really been getting that many cucumbers. So I've been trying different pickling recipes just to get pickled things on the shelf. And I've been getting some carrots, so I thought I would can up some pickled carrots. I found a recipe on the National Center for Home Food Preservation, and it's a free website that you can go on. I'll have the recipe linked down in the description. It's also just a really great resource if you ever have any questions regarding anything related to canning or preserving food in general. You can always look up whatever it is that you're looking for and usually find the answer for it. The recipe I'm making today is very simple. I thought I would add it to the collection of water bath canning recipes that I have for beginners on our channel. It'll add a little bit more variety to what we already have there. So just like with all of my other step-by-step canning videos, I usually put the timestamps down in the description of the video so that if there's a particular part that you are looking for, you just go down to that spot, you click it, and it'll bring you right to that section in the video. And you don't have to watch the whole thing. But I hope you do, because I like that. Let's get into the materials that I have for canning up the carrots today. First things first is our water bath canner. I am using an electric water bath canner. I have a gas range that runs on propane, and I prefer to use the electric one. It doesn't require as much babysitting as a canner would over an open flame. While I still need to monitor it and watch it, I don't have to make sure that everything's safe around the open flame. So that is one of the reasons why I have it. The other reason why I have it is I really, really like it. I've tried to find it on Amazon or anywhere to link it, but I cannot find it anymore. So I have their newer one linked. The other reason why I like it is it frees up the space on my stove because I'm usually got other things going on while I'm canning, making dinner or whatever. You can use a traditional water bath canner. That's not what this is. This is just a stock pot, but you could use this also. You just need some sort of rack at the bottom. So in here, you can see the metal rack at the bottom. You need that at the bottom of whatever pot you're using. Usually like the granite ware water bath canners comes with everything you need. It's got a really nice rack that comes out and sits that rests on the sides, or you can just make one. I've seen people, I've never done it, but you can make one out of tin foil just by forming some sort of rack for the bottom, or I've seen people take dishcloths and rest it at the bottom of the stock pot. The reason for that is because you don't want the jars directly sitting on the bottom of the pot. You don't want it sitting directly on the heat source, and you don't want them clanking into one another, okay? Because this is the water gets up to a rolling boil, so they start kind of dancing around in there. And having this rack at the bottom stabilizes them a little bit, as well as keeps them off of the direct heat source underneath. So I'm gonna stick this back in the bottom of my canner. I do have a medium to large stock pot here to make the brine for the carrots. As far as the jars go, I'm using wide mouth pint-sized jars. The recipe I'm making says it makes 4 pint-sized jars. I like using wide mouth for when I'm canning chunky things because it's easier to pack the jar. Here's a regular mouth jar. You can use these too. It just has shoulders on it and a little bit of a smaller lid opening, so it actually fits inside the other jars. The other difference is that these jars are a little bit shorter, and it's something to keep in mind if you have limited storage space like I do and you have lower shelves. I use those wire shelves that you can get at Walmart to give myself some more space. In our pantry closet, I have a low space to slide jars into, and these fit perfectly under there. The other thing with the jars is, and I keep forgetting to mention this in my other videos, I remember when we get to the step where we're cleaning the rim of the jar when we're canning, but you want to inspect your jars before, if you remember to. If you don't remember to, try and remember later on before you put the lids on, to just inspect and make sure that there's no cracks or chips or divots or anything, because those things can prevent the lids from sealing, and you don't really want to have a cracked jar in your pantry either with your food. Next thing we have are lids and bands. The lids should be the same size as your jar, so they come in 2 sizes: wide mouth, which fits the jars that I have, or regular mouth, which fits the jars that I just showed you, and they just sit right on top of the jar, and the rings or bands fit around them like that. And that's how it goes in the canner. The other supplies I have: distilled white vinegar, some cloths here. I have a lint-free flour sack towel. I use this, or a t-shirt rag, just something that doesn't produce the lint. I use this to clean the rims of the jars with the distilled white vinegar, and we do that after we fill the jars because you don't want any residue left on the rim of the jar. The other thing I have is kind of a thicker towel. I'm only canning 4 pint-sized jars today, so I don't need a big one, but when I'm doing like a large batch of things, I will usually use just a big bath towel on the countertop to set them down. But I'll have this folded over on our countertop. It's to prevent the hot jars coming out of the canner and going right onto your countertop. The temperature shock can crack your jar. And we also don't want to ruin the countertops for the people like me that have not very nice countertops. By having a towel there, it just creates a barrier, a little bit of protection for the jar, and it gives them a nice, comfy place to relax for a day or so before we put them in the pantry. The other things that we have is a canning funnel. I just got this recently. I used it in our last canning video, and I really like it. I have the plastic one too that shows the headspace, and that's a good one, but I like this one. I like how it sits inside the jar. There's less mess. I don't know. I just kind of like it a little bit better, but the plastic one is good too if you like that one. And then I also have this bubble tool here. As you do this longer and longer, you will start to recognize the head spaces in the jars. So we'll have like 1 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/4 inch head space. You'll start to notice that based on the rings on the jar. But the bubble tool is used to get the bubbles out. It's used to make sure that all the liquid is getting into all the gaps in whatever it is that you're canning. So we use that, and then the other side usually has the measurements for headspace, and goes down 1 inch is all the stairs, and then 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. And that just tells you how far down the contents should be in your jar. That gives us the headspace. And then I also have a ladle, and for today this is going to be ladling the brine over the top of the carrots after we pack the jars. I do have a pickle packer. That's one of these things. I don't know if I'm going to need it. I might need it. I might use it. You can use it to pack down whatever it is that you're canning. I usually use it for pickles. We'll see if I need it today for the carrots. But wait, there's more. Jar lifters. And you use it to grab your jar and move it around. And especially when you're lifting the jars out of the very hot canner, these are fantastic. These are my favorite ones. They're the oldest ones. They're nice because they're flimsy a little bit. Like I can easily move them with one hand. Some of the jar grippers I've tried, they're a little stiff to move, and after a while I get hand fatigue. This one here came with this set, and this one I don't recommend. It's for sure hard to open with one hand, and I don't like that. Your hand gets tired after a while. My suggestion is test drive the jar grippers. If they hurt your hands when you're, or throw it around a little bit. If they hurt your hands at all, return it. Don't keep it. Get a different one. It's not worth it. Now I need to prep my ingredients. I'm going to do that and make the kids some lunch. So I will be back in a second. Alright, now we're going to talk about the ingredients. And I've got 2 3/4 pounds of prepared cut up carrots. I ended up needing a couple more carrots, so I grabbed some from my fridge that were store-bought, and I cut some of those up too. And I got just over 2 3/4 pounds of carrots. I only needed 2 from the store. The rest were ours from our garden. Distilled white vinegar, we need 5.5 cups of that. I've got a cup of water, 2 cups of sugar, 2 teaspoons of canning salt. That's what that looks like. 8 teaspoons of mustard seed, 4 teaspoons of celery seed. The first thing I'm going to do is get my lids washed up. This is something I do. You do not need to boil lids anymore, and many people just use them straight out of the box like that, but I wash them in some warm soapy water and rinse them up, and then just put them off to the side. I also like to get my jars preheated by keeping them right around where I'm cooking. It will preheat the jars because you don't want to fill cold jars with a very hot liquid. It can cause them to crack. So I just kind of keep them around where I'm cooking and stuff, and it gets them nice and warmed up. Some people also pre-warm them up by putting them into your water bath canner while that heats up, but I find this method to work well for me. Now we're going to get the brine started. To this pot I'm going to be adding 5.5 cups of distilled white vinegar, 1 cup of water, 2 cups of sugar, 2 teaspoons of canning or pickling salt. And I'm going to give that a stir. At this point, we are not adding the mustard seed or the celery seed. Those will be going directly in our canning jars before we pack them. So now I'm gonna bring this up to a boil. Usually just like to turn this over medium heat, medium low heat, and let it slowly come up to a boil. All right, now this is at a gentle boil, and we're gonna let this cook just like this for about 3 minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and actually add the carrots to this. I'm gonna raise the heat back up and wait for this to come up to a boil. Now that these are at a boil, I had to turn my vent hood on. I'm going to let these boil for 10 minutes. While that boils, I'm going to go ahead and fill our jars with the celery seed and mustard seed. Okay, each jar is going to get 2 teaspoons of mustard seed. One teaspoon of celery seed. I'm going to turn the burner down. I'm going to turn the vent hood off for a second. We're going to now pack the carrots into the jars. And we're not going to do a lot of the brine right now. We're just going to mostly pack in the carrots, and then we'll pour the brine over the top. And we're going to do that leaving 1 inch headspace. And I'll show what that looks like in a second. Okay, I'm going to pack them down. So the head space, it's the distance between the contents of the jar and the rim of the jar. I lost my bubble tool. Oh, here it is, it fell. So we want to leave 1 inch. I have a little over 1 inch there, but that's okay because I've already packed it down. So now we're going to take some of the brine from the carrots we just cooked. Put that back on top. When you pack the carrots in first, you're going to leave 1 inch of headspace. And then when we pour the brine over the top, it's going to be up to 1/2 inch of headspace. So the final result will be 1/2 inch of headspace. Making sure that you debubble is important because you want the liquid to be between all the carrots. We just kind of stick the bubble tool in between all the carrots and get the liquid in there. And as you can see, the liquid level dropped because we got the bubbles out. So all the liquid went in between the carrots, and now we need some more liquid. And we're going to do this again. And I'm going to use my pickle pecker again to just push everything down. We're going to go ahead and do the rest of the jars. Now we're going to measure 1/2 inch. Okay, so headspace is important. If you overfill your jar, it can cause the lids not to seal. It can also cause siphoning, which is where the liquid inside the jar escapes during the canning process or immediately after the canning process. And leaving too much headspace also can prevent the lids from sealing, and it can limit shelf life. And all of the methods for canning this item that have been researched, like the National Center for Home Food Preservation, all of their research, all of their time and energy has been based on the 1/2 inch of headspace that is left inside the jar. So that is a few of the reasons why it's important to pay attention to those things. Headspace varies depending on what you're canning. So if you're canning chunky, like stews or meat or something, the headspace might be 1 inch. If you're canning like jams and jellies and things, then the headspace might only be like 1/4 inch. So it all varies. But the next step is we are going to go ahead and clean the rims of the jars using the distilled white vinegar and a lint-free cloth. And we do this to make sure that there's no sticky residue left on the rims of the jars. Any dust, debris, things like that, anything sticky, any food residue on the rim can prevent the lid from sealing also. And I find that distilled white vinegar does this the best. It's also what is recommended. Now we're going to center our lids on top of the jars. Just using the tips of your fingers, you're going to tighten the band over the lid of the jar. Like that. Don't overthink it too much. Just do that. You don't need to crank it down. Over cranking down the jar lid can also prevent it from sealing. And that's how those look. So we're going to move them over to the canner now. I'm going to turn the canner up. Using the jar grippers, move them to the canner. Now I'm going to, I can see that there's 1 inch of water over the top of the jars, but if you are unsure, you can use your bubble tool real quick. Stick it in the water and make sure that there is 1 inch of water over the top. That is what is needed for water bath canning. If you are steam canning or pressure canning, that is very, very different. So this is just for water bath canning. And I'm going to put the lid back on the pot and make sure that the holes are pointed towards the vent hood, which I am now going to turn back on. And I'm going to wait for this to come up to a boil before I set our timer. Alright, now that this is at a rolling boil, I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for 15 minutes. That is for a elevation between 0 and 1,000 feet. If you are between 1,001 feet and 6,000, it would be 20 minutes. And anything over 6,000 feet would be 25 minutes. Alright, turn the timer off. And we're going to turn the burner off. I'm going to lift the lid, point it away from the face and towards the vent hood. And we're going to let this sit here for 5 or 10 minutes or so and let those cool off before we take them out of the canner. If you have a water bath canner that has a rack that lifts out, you can do that also. These have been sitting here for at least 5 minutes or so, and I'm going to take them out one by one. Just like that, and move them over to the towel. Those look really pretty in the jar. I love the color, the orangey color. It's very, very pretty. So a couple of notes that they have is that you want to allow the carrots to sit in the processed jars for 3 to 5 days before consuming for the best flavor development. I did try a couple of the carrots just to see what it tasted like, and it tasted like pickled carrots, and the carrots are very sweet. I'm happy to have that in our pantry. Before these go into the pantry though, they're gonna sit on the counter for like a day or so. That's them popping. It just gives time for the jars to cool off, allow the jars lids to seal. After the day or so of them sitting on the counter, I will remove the bands on the jars, do a little test to make sure that the lids have sealed correctly, and press down on the button, make sure that the button is down, flip it around a little bit, make sure that it's sealed, and then those will go right into our pantry, which is a dark, cool area in our house. The reason why we remove the bands from the jars when we store them is so that we can see if the lid itself has sealed correctly to the jar. It is the first thing that we do to make sure that the food is safe to eat, is look at the lid and make sure it's on the jar. When you leave the band on the jar, if the lid did not seal properly to the jar, or if it for some reason became unsealed while it was being stored, it can actually reseal to the jar. And you wouldn't know because the band is on there. So with the band off of it, our eyes are able to see right away if the lid is unsealed. I have had that happen recently. I don't remember what it was that I grabbed. I feel like it was applesauce or something like that, where the lid became unsealed and I was quickly able to see it and get rid of it. It could have been because it got knocked around in there. It could have been because it fell off the shelf and I didn't know it. Well, it could be for whatever reason, but the lid became unsealed, and then the food inside of it will get moldy usually. But for pickled things, sometimes maybe not. So you want to make sure that the lid is on there really good, and that you remove the band so that it can be stored, and you can have that your first detection if the lid is sealed is visual and able to see whether it's sealed or not. But I think that is going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for joining me today while I canned up pickled carrots, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!